All right, let's ruffle some feathers. Oh boy. Okay, so a little background to this. I've been kind of getting into this argument about young Earth creationism, old Earth creationism, which one's right, which one's wrong. In the course of that, I was going through different articles and different sources, and I came across the Answers in Genesis. These guys are pretty reputable in the area of young Earth creationism. They do a lot of work in it. And so I thought, yeah, these guys probably have a good view, right? So, and then they said, hey, here's an article of our views summarized and defended, and I'm like, boom, okay, yeah, this is perfect. I'm gonna look at this article, I'm gonna read it, and I was just reading it. Yeah, it was okay for the most part, but I noticed that there were some issues with the article, and with the arguments that were brought up. Um, and I don't know, it really bothered me when I saw these arguments because they were really quite poor. To be clear, I don't care one way or the other on this, really. I know you can probably debate me on that later on, but I don't really care about young Earth, old Earth creationism. The fact is, God created the world. He made creation, created the heavens and the earth, created plants and animals, stars, moon, sun, planets, the celestial being, sorry, spiritual beings, spiritual realm, and everything like that. Created us, heaven and hell, so on. God did it that. I believe that. And I believe that the Bible speaks to that clearly. But I don't really care how old the earth is, okay? And just an aside, I'm not going to address this here, but dude, y'all got to stop making this whole issue like a salvation issue, or like make it seem like you have to believe this. Like, dude, seriously? Chill. Just chill. Anyways, um, yeah, so as I was looking through the arguments, I just found some that were not very good. Um, in terms of the scientific ones, I can't say much to it because I'm not a scientist. I'm a theologian. I'm not really a theologian. I study theology. I don't have a doctorate, okay? But yeah, so I decided now I'm going to go and look through some of the arguments and kind of point out where I find issues with them. And the point of this is really just to, again, further the goal of ensuring that we as Christians have good thinking, good reasoning, and good argumentation, because we don't want to be those guys who just say, believe this because we say so. We want to be ones who are logical and reasonable. So yeah, let's go into that. So, creationism, if you don't know what it is basically the view that the six-day creation in Genesis is literal. So God created the earth in 6 24-hour days and rested on the seventh, and therefore placing the age of the earth at roughly 6,000 to 12,000 years old. According to here, this is based off the genealogies in the Bible, specifically in Genesis, where you count from Adam all the way to Noah to, I think, Abraham, something like that. And so yeah, you count that time, and it comes up to around 6,000, 12,000 years old. This, yeah, so this is a view that has, of course, gained a lot of controversy, right? Because you have people who look at science and say, hey, I'm saying this doesn't really work. But you have people who look at the Bible and say, well, if you believe the Bible, it must be true. And so there is this tension here. The arguments actually get very thorny and very nasty very quickly. People pointing the fingers, being like, you're just trying to stay relevant to the culture, or you're anti-science, or, yeah. So I don't really want to go into that with this video. Personally, again, I don't really care. I don't see much good argument for young Earth creationism, theologically or biblically, but that's not what I'm going to do here. I'm just going to point out where there are some issues with the arguments that they bring up. So the first one, Genesis is history, not poetry. Now, this argument actually is one that counters old Earth creationism, the idea that Genesis chapter 1, the creation narrative, is actually poetic. It follows a poetic form, right? And it is poetry. So Dr. Mortensen here states that, well, actually Genesis is history, not poetry. And right, and so the whole book is history. And I think for the most part, we all agree with that. In fact, I don't find too many old Earth creationists, as far as I can tell, who argue that Genesis is not historical account. They will say, yeah, Genesis is historical. Noah was a thing. Abraham existed. So did Joseph, Jacob, Isaac. Wait, not Joseph. Wait, yes, Joseph. Joseph is still around there. Um, you know, that's legit. And so, yeah, but the problem is that Dr. Mortensen neglected to remember to actually properly defend the legitimacy of Genesis 1. See, he did a great deal of proving that Genesis as a whole is a historical book, but he doesn't do a good job in proving that Genesis chapter 1 is historical. Okay, that's not it. Right. And he actually admits that part of Genesis has poetic devices. It has poetic instances. We see in the Bible examples of books that have narrative and poetry. You could take John 1 as poetry. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. This beautiful opening to the book of John as an opening to introduce the overall idea of the gospel and what was to come. A similar argument can be used for Genesis 1, therefore. But this is not something that Dr. Mortensen addresses. He just simply says, well, Genesis as a whole is history. He neglects to address properly the argument that Genesis chapter 1 can be seen as poetry. Tied to this, there was another argument that I heard from another Young Earth Creationist. He's not affiliated with these guys. I think he's got a YouTube channel called The Daily Disciple. He brings up this argument that, well, if Genesis 1 is poetic, how do we know where to stop saying that things are poetic? That is a very bad argument. We just look at the textual evidence. We look at we can also look at the archaeological evidence. We can look at other stuff. We say that something is poetic when there is evidence to prove that it is poetic. So we will not take the entirety of the Bible as poetic or figurative. Right? It's very obvious that there are narrative aspects to it, and we will take it as such. So yeah. Moving on. I'm not going to address. Okay, 2. I do have an argument against it, but that's not what I'm trying to do here. I'm just trying to show the issues with the arguments here. So I'm not going to directly engage with them that much. But yeah, this one I have, like the scientific ones, I don't have much to say on it either, because again, I don't really know it. But this one here really bugs me. Point 6. To summarize, this argument is essentially saying that Jesus held to a young earth creationist view because of the way that he talked about this. And so, therefore, it is true. Now, this is very much an appeal to authority. Divine authority, certainly, one that is very reputable and very trustworthy, but it is an appeal to authority, and that is a fallacy. It more or less just works like, well, because Jesus did this, therefore you must accept it, right? We have to be careful with that because Jesus curses the fig tree, and it's like, okay, we're not supposed to go around cursing fig trees. That's not right. It's like, just because Jesus did something does not mean we can do that, right? Jesus is crucified on the cross. We're not supposed to do that either. So you can't just say, well, Jesus said this, Jesus did this, therefore we must do that and accept it. We have to take that into consideration. We also have to remember that, Jesus might not have been intending to say scientific fact here. So the idea is that Jesus, in his remarks, somehow points out the idea that, yeah, young earth creationism is a legit thing. 6,000-year-old earth, literal 6-day creation. Cool. My problem with this argument is that Jesus' main focus in doing his ministry was not actually to do, let's not actually to point out science, right? That's not his job. Jesus came that we may have life. He came not to judge the world, but he came not to condemn the world, but to save the world through him. His goal was to save the world, not be like, okay, y'all don't understand this now, but in a few thousand years' time, there's going to be this guy who comes along, is like, okay, so the Earth is like really old. All right, so I'm going to tell you guys right now that yeah, that's actually not true. Right now, the problem with this argument is that why would Jesus say anything that would potentially change people's view, challenge people's views on such a peripheral issue, right? Why would he do that? He wouldn't. There's no reason why he would do that because it does not make sense. He came to give us life. He came to save us. And if he tried to tell him something that was absolutely removed from anything they had understood and it had nothing to do with the gospel, well, it would distract from the gospel message that he was trying to tell, right? Like, a classic example is the parable of the mustard seed. The mustard seed is not the smallest seed in the world. Sorry, you might, if you didn't know that, it's true. It's just a fun little bit of trivia, actually. The smallest seed in the world is something else. I think it's like an orchid. I forget what the exact name is, but there's a lot of other small seeds out there, smaller than the mustard seed. But the point is, he's not going to say, well, you see, the North American orchid has a smaller seed and is the smallest seed. No, that's not the point that he was trying to make here. First of all, he wouldn't have brought up the orchid seed because these guys, the Jewish ancient Near East audience, they wouldn't have known what this seed was. And the second part is that's not the point he was trying to make. He was trying to make a point that, you know, the kingdom of God is like the mustard seed. That it starts small, but it grows really big. The biggest tree in the garden. It grows the biggest, the largest. And so to say that because Jesus said that the earth was young earth is not really accurate. First of all, he never really states that explicitly. And second, why would he have done, there's no reason why he would have shaken things up in the first place. So you can't really use this argument very well. Now, again, I don't have anything to say about these because, again, I don't do science. This one has an interesting background to it. I'm still looking into it. It's interesting. Yeah, again, this is not really a scholarly source, so there's only so much you can address them with. But yeah. Anyways, this one just completely blows my mind. It just completely blows my mind. Like Dr. Mortensen needs to change his logical approach. This is nothing more than well, it has been and therefore always will be, and it has been for a long time held that this is true. Therefore, it is true. This is, it's a logical fallacy. This is simply fallacious reasoning. Just because we have held it for a long time in the past does not mean that it is right. And if it seems that, and if it appears that these guys are, I had something else to say. No, anyways, like, just because it has been held for a long time does not mean that it is true. The Pope has been held to be authoritative for a long time before the Reformation. Well, I don't see many Protestants these days seeing the Pope as authoritative, nor tradition, except I guess in this case. I don't really understand the argument here then, because just because it has been the case for a long time does not mean that it is right or that it is good. We used to think slavery was a good thing. It's not. At least not in the way that we started to do it. Actually, just in general, slavery is not an okay thing to do. It's not okay. right? And so to say that, oh, young Earth creationism has always been the view of the church, therefore it's right, is wrong. It's not logically consistent. It is not logically correct. Um, Another thing I would like to point out, he makes another fallacy, but I'll get to that in a little bit. He actually argues that is consistent that right, that God, who loves truth, uh, wouldn't have let Jews and Christians be misled. Actually, that's a fair argument, but the thing is, again, why would he change that? Why would there be a need to change that? Why is this something that they would need to know? Does it affect them? Does it change how they view the world? No, it doesn't. It doesn't affect them. And because again, the bottom line is God created the heavens and the earth. He created by the breath of his mouth. He spoke everything into existence. He breathed life into man. He created plants and animals and trees and birds and fish and all the other little bugs and insects on the ground. Right. So it's not like God was deceiving us by not correcting this. It's just that it's like you guys believe that I created the universe. Yes. You guys believe that I'm omnipotent. Yes. Good. Okay. Cool. Good. Um. Yeah. Anyways, the last thing I would just like to say that, bro, um, this is an unfortunate fallacy. Like, this is just an unfortunate fallacy, and it's like, in the early 19th century, he used godless men who rejected the Bible as God's inerrant word to correct the church's understanding of Genesis. Um, ad hominem, like, you know, come on, come on. This is the best you can put out. No, come on, really? um, yeah. His argument here is again not um, his response here about godless men being used previously. How that doesn't work actually is not logical. Again, because as I pointed out, it is possible that Scripture does not actually teach a 6,000-year-old Earth, and therefore there's not actually any contradiction there. Yeah. Yeah. So overall, I am generally disappointed with this article and with Dr. Mortensen. I would have hoped that he would have presented the arguments in a better manner, one that is free of logical fallacies and especially ad hominem. I would have loved to see that. Again, I can't speak much to his scientific arguments. Uh, I can say something about the biblical arguments, but I'm not going to. Overall, I think this is a troubling argument that there's a bunch of issues with it. I would not recommend anyone use this as a source to back up their views if you are a young Earth creationist, because again, the arguments 11, 6, and 1, and I think, no, 11, 6, 1, 6, and 11, those points are, they're not very good. Um, yeah, with that being said, again, I don't intend to make a video on young Earth or old Earth creationism. I don't care. I really don't care. I just care about right thinking and right logic, and yeah. Anyways, so leave your thoughts and comments. I know there's going to be some people who disagree with me. Again, I don't care either way. Like if it's old Earth, young Earth, it's fine. So don't just like jump in and say you're an old Earth creationist. Yeah. Um, but yeah. So yeah, that's it. Peace.